Alrighty, guys. Welcome to the Statist podcast with Cameron and Julian. This will be our first trial episode, and we'll welcome any kind of feedback. We are both self-proclaimed democratic socialists, and we will be trying to provide our perspective of politics, news, and other current events. And we are also here with Duddy.
What's poppin'?
And let's get this started.
All right. First starting off, the New Hampshire primary was yesterday. We saw Bernie win by a pretty sizable margin, which, I mean, it really wasn't a surprise. I mean, looking, of course, at the polls and all of that, he was indicated to win that. And, I mean, we could certainly also look at how far he's come. But what's particularly interesting to me is what's going to be coming after this. I think that this is, I mean, I obviously support him, but this is kind of the peak of things right now. If anything, we're going to get ready for the fight in South Carolina, which, looking at some polls, I want to say is going to be about a 30% margin, and it's for Clinton, of course, right now. In other states like Nevada, I think they just really have to hear him. They just, again, it's one of those things where what we saw in Iowa, he had a 7% whenever he first announced, and then whenever we get the debates going and all that, we start to see that he was gaining a sizable advantage. But South Carolina is really interesting. I don't know if he could gain that sort of following, even if they kind of give him that shot.
Yeah, South Carolina is definitely what's going to be worrying me. I do know, however, he did pick up 2 key endorsements in South Carolina today. I don't exactly know their names, but I think it will really help out with the African American vote.
Yeah, I know he met. Are you referring to him meeting with Reverend Al Sharpton?
No, it wasn't Al Sharpton. Oh. It was, I think it was 2 congressmen.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't even know he met with Sharpton.
Yeah, he met with Sharpton in Harlem today.
Is Sharpton a supporter of him?
It's everybody's saying that Sharpton's going to probably come out and endorse him as well.
Okay.
Which, I mean, it's another endorsement. It's high celebrity. It's a polarizing figure. Some people love him, some people hate him. But
yeah.
Good endorsement nonetheless. It's still good press.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
All right.
Backing up in New Hampshire, Bernie won with a 60.4% margin to 38% Hillary.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, I mean, it was projected it was going to be huge, but, I mean, I was working and they called that at around 7, I would say. They called it really early.
it was within 30 minutes. But what I want to get at is I want to ask y'all, do you think it's because a lot of people tend to use this talking point where New Hampshire is in Bernie's backyard and people are going to tend to vote for him because it's in his backyard? What do you say about that? Do you think?
I think it might be within his backyard. I don't think it's because, he's in our backyard in the sense of, he's just here. I think probably in that area, there's a lot of people who think alike, just like they do in Vermont. But at the same time, again, I've always said it. I think whenever it comes to the U.S. presidential elections, we see America kind of shift to the left, and that's for different reasons. But while the Republicans try to run to the right for the primaries, the Democrats try to run to the left. And then both of them, whenever the general comes in, they try to go into the center because, for some odd reason, they still think that center politicians win elections. So I don't think it's by chance that you have more liberal democratic-minded people in that area, because I think that's everywhere. I think mainly they just don't get out. They just don't have a high voter turnout in most elections because both candidates are trying to be center left or center right, depending on what they're trying to be.
Okay.
So I think there is a little bit of truth to that, just a tiny bit.
Well, here's a fun fact: nobody's won by this margin since John F. Kennedy.
Yeah.
And I think that's looking really good.
Yeah, it's saying something. It was.
We're looking at a guy who was polling at 7% whenever he announced his candidacy.
Yeah. Well, that was at least I didn't get to see what he was polling in New Hampshire, but that was.
But I mean, nationally, it was.
Yeah,
7%.
yeah. I mean, yeah. we don't even have to cite the numbers. We knew that it was an uphill battle from the get-go.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
One of the things that really pissed me off, the Iowa caucus. The Iowa caucus is ridiculous. So, for people who might not know this, they flipped a coin in six precincts.
It was 6.
It was about 6 precincts to decide who was the winner of that precinct. And Hillary won all 6 times. But the thing that really gets under my skin is, since when do we decide elections the same way we'll decide what board game we're playing at a fucking college party? Like, that's just ridiculous.
Would you rather it be rock, paper, scissors?
Well, you know what?
You get 3 instead of 2.
yeah, there's the odds. Yeah, just have Bernie and Hillary meet up in a caucus site and just Rochambeau that bitch.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an old arcane thing. I don't know how you would decide it otherwise, but it is really odd. Trevor Noah was pointing that out. How do we decide it the same way we decide who gets the football first in the Super Bowl? It's odd.
Yeah.
Do you not think that maybe holding off for the next day and letting everyone revote, because a day can change anyone's opinion. So, especially after they see that, they can be like, okay, maybe we made the wrong decision or something like that. Like, if they would have done a revote, we would have definitely gotten different numbers.
Well, they actually did do a recount, and we saw a slight bump with Bernie Sanders.
Well, yeah,
in
he
the Iowa caucus.
Originally, the margin was that Hillary won by 4 delegates, 0.4 in this case. And then the next day, they recounted, they re-evaluated everything, and it was by 0.3, so Hillary lost a delegate, Bernie gained 1.
Yes, which, we'll take all the delegates we can receive,
Yeah, and so, as much as there is some shadiness going on with that whole Iowa caucus thing, I still think it's a win for Bernie Sanders overall. Even as he indicated in his speech, you're taking a guy who started at 7% and you're putting him, 50% within Iowa. That's It was Hillary Clinton's race to lose, and it's becoming more and more apparent that she just might lose. Which I'm not the mainstream media just didn't give Bernie the chance of, didn't give him a chance at all. I've always said from the beginning, he has positions that are in line with the American people. He could win. Just like in the 2008 election, somebody to the left of Hillary came up and beat her. But you just had to get that name recognition out there. And,
absolutely.
And Iowa was a perfect example of that.
Do y'all really think that mainstream media has much of a say in it now that we live in an age of the internet, especially with all the millennials getting ideas from it?
They still have, in my opinion, I think they still have a say, because they do kind of still craft the narrative.
Yes.
If we looked at the first debate, there was some good poll numbers that came out. They used a method, I forget who did it, but they looked at the methodology of it, and basically it was people who were saying Clinton had won, but they didn't see the debate. They had just caught it on CNN, and from what they got from CNN's coverage and narrative, Clinton won. So in their minds, Clinton won.
Okay.
And so I still think they have a huge power for the narrative of maybe older voters.
Yeah.
And with the internet, that's what I guess I love about it, is it's the kind of an open market of ideas, and so you could go anywhere and get either a kind of a good sense of the truth, or in some cases just the flat out truth.
Well, I think the media doesn't play a role in this, because I don't know if you've heard about the Bernie blackout.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, how much was that? I think Bernie's only gotten 60 seconds since he's announced his campaign, and we have Trump and Hillary who's gotten hours.
No, Trump has gotten the most. He's gotten close to 2. I forget the methodology of that. I think isn't it 2 hours per day, or
it's a very large number.
Yeah,
I think we can all agree on that.
I had seen something of Bernie's being about 6 minutes, 3 minutes. And
I think the biggest thing that's the biggest part about this election is social media. Because despite the Bernie blackout, Bernie has really picked up momentum from Facebook, and really social media has been the catalyst that's really boosted his campaign.
Well, see, it always has had that potential to be. We see so many people switching just even in regular TV habits. We see so many people switching from just watching MSNBC's lineup to just saying, "Hey, I just like that one show. Let's go to Netflix."
Yeah,
and that's bound to happen with anything, especially news. And now that we're starting to see, and I mean, millennials have known this forever, that the news is corrupt to a certain extent, and so they found a place that where at least the establishment's influence on money and corporate media is going to be either slightly less or it's going to not be there at all, and so of course they're going to choose that one. It's non-biased.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like the online media is going to slowly but surely cause a rift in like every election where like we're going to have so many less like people on the right wing because of the fact that like whenever you grow up without all that stuff, you're just going off of what your parents tell you and then what you see on the news. Whereas, like, with all of us millennials, we grew up and we were just like, okay, mom and dad, and then we got online and was like, oh, no, mom and dad. Like, and we just were able to find our own information, and no one's been able to do that.
The internet is a very powerful source.
I've heard many people, like, refer to it in this way, but and it rings true to me. I mean, in the 80s and in, like, the 70s, it was the guy who was the loudest guy in the room who was right. Yep. You couldn't bring out your phone and be like, okay, well, let me check what he just said.
Exactly.
And that's what the internet has become to. And that's exactly what you're saying. That your parents might tell you something, and there might be a grain of truth, but you're able to bring out your phone, fact check them, and be like, okay, they were right here, they were wrong there, and And so, I mean, it's been crucial to Bernie Sanders' campaign, without a doubt. Yeah. And I as much as like I like that, I still worry about the mainstream media's narrative. It was that last debate I was telling you, it was the Iowa caucus, that if he had lost by even like 3-point margin, the mainstream media would have probably blown it out of the water and made it seem like Hillary just totally demolished him. Yeah. But because they couldn't, because the numbers were so close, they couldn't promote that narrative because it wouldn't have held any water at all. Yeah. But I still worry about the narrative that they put forth. I mean, everybody remembers the Howard Dean thing. He did that one, and they carried that out, and it lost him a lot of points for a little expression he used. Yeah.
Well, we have Donald Trump calling Ted Cruz a pussy. That's really.
Well, but I mean, like, the older generation, they're so about that stuff. I mean, they feel like they've been fighting this war, which they haven't, and they feel like they finally have someone who's going to fight for them. And so they're just going to listen to everything he says and just be like, "Oh, that's cool." Yeah.
And it's one of those things though that it's I think it was in The Art of the Deal he specified that whenever he makes a statement, there's going to be no caveats. It's going to be black and white, because that is what's appealing. And so, I mean, that's just, what he wrote, and we could apply it to what he's doing right now. There is no caveats when he speaks. There's no shades of gray. There's just black and there's white. Us against them. Yeah. And that's why Trump is brilliant when it comes to marketing himself out to politics. Mm-hmm. As much as I can disagree with his rhetoric, disagree with his talking points, his issues, his stances, he's brilliant.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
He's the Kanye of politics.
Before Kanye.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. I don't know if y'all have heard about this, but it's the Tinder campaign for Bernie, and what's really started it was two girls. I know one goes by the name of Haley Lint, I believe, and I can't remember the other girl's name. But they've been talking to over 600 guys a day on Tinder, campaigning for Bernie Sanders. And they eventually got their Tinder accounts banned. And recently got them back up, and they're doing it all over again. Do you think this is good or bad for Bernie?
I think it's good for Bernie for, once again, the millennials and stuff. My problem with all of this stuff with like the social media, as much as I find the dank memes hilarious and stuff, I see there's a huge problem there because people are gonna look at that and they're gonna be like, "What the fuck? These kids just just see these funny
they're
things.
ignorant,
And they're like,
right? Yeah, people are gonna think they're ignorant.
It goes back to it's going to go back to the reinforcing of, well, millennials are just in for the popularity contest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what we kind of got with Obama too. And
no one's gonna respect our opinions because we are able to find some humor in it.
But at the same time, I don't think that's our fault, though.
Oh, it's not at all.
No.
It's not at all. We should just be able to support the humor, but it's just it sucks that like it's gonna keep happening where everyone else that's against Bernie, even Hillary voters, like they're gonna be like, this isn't the way you do this. Like this isn't a game.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, at the same time, they are hilarious, and little weird stories like this are.
I found myself laughing my ass off whenever I was reading this story.
I think ultimately Bernie's not going to embrace it, and that's okay. But I think, is it going to do a little bit for him on the ground?
Hopefully,
yeah, I'll do a little bit for him on the ground, and that's fine. And what I like about Bernie is you have such a clash of you could have somebody who you disagree with just a little bit, but here we have a candidate who overall is going to work for the both of you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so even to the older generation, that at least speaks to a little bit to them. We still have that. They could never understand maybe the weird social media reactions and the weird, the quirkiness of this all. But they will at least agree with us on a policy perspective, and millennials aren't dumb in the sense that they understand the policy perspective. So it just kind of gets this good middle ground. It's really interesting, in my opinion.
Okay, so do you have any topics you want to share, Julian?
Oh yeah. For anybody who doesn't know, I love like more kind of foreign policy, more kind of civil liberties oriented type stories. Netanyahu, of course, you remember Netanyahu with his speech.
Netanyahu.
He's fencing in Israel for like the 5th time.
Okay.
Which, I mean, there was okay. So let me get to why I guess he's justifying it. He's justifying it for citing the influx of the Palestinians, of course, to the west, and then also we have surrounding Arab state citizens that are trying to get into Israel as well, and of course Hamas being the main threat.
Yeah.
There's 2 things that outraged people. First, he referred to them as wild beasts, which is it bad? Kind of, but could I see Netanyahu doing it and him in some weird way justifying it, that anybody who wants to come into Israel being wild beasts? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. My main problem, though, with this is we've seen him flip-flop on the 2-state solution for just with this just going back to the past election. Whenever he wanted to get reelected, he said that there would never be a 2-state solution, never go to the table with the Palestinians. And then after he was reelected, he said it's possible, which I don't believe him personally, but I just find that odd for him to flip-flop even after that. And my concern, and I mean it's not really much of a concern because the situation with Israel and Palestine has never really looked fairly promising, but this is certainly not going to help it. I mean, to build another big fence, and I mean some Palestinians would take that as that they're calling them wild beasts who aren't part of Hamas, who aren't terrorists.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things that I still have a problem pinning Netanyahu to one issue on this thing, and I think he's just kind of playing with it, and inciting both sides of the problem, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah, I agree.
But I also we referred to it earlier, but we were talking about how Trump called Ted Cruz a pussy.
Oh yeah.
Did you hear why that was though?
No, I didn't actually.
Okay,
I just saw a clip of it, and I thought it was hilarious.
Okay, so Ted Cruz was asked his position on waterboarding during the Republican debate. I didn't watch it. I don't know why he said he was against it. I mean, if I could take a guess, it'd probably be for constitutional reasons, due process, which as much as I disagree with Ted Cruz, I would agree with him there. I mean, the Constitution gives you due process. We don't just punish innocent, people for. But of course, Donald Trump took fire on him and said, well, whenever we have them beheading Christians and beheading even non-Christians and doing that, shouldn't we be able to waterboard them? And I mean, on the civil liberties side, it's just no. But even what people forget, and this is the narrative from my research, is even when we were waterboarding people, we weren't doing it to the people who were in Al Qaeda. We weren't doing it to terrorists. Basically, everybody gets an idea of well, we were on the battlefield, we captured a guy, and we sent him to Guantanamo Bay. Which, I mean, that could have happened, but the main thing that we had is we had a setup with the U.S. government had a setup with the Pakistanis, and Afghanistan, and they said, okay, whenever you wrangle up these terrorists, we'll send them to us, and we'll put them in this, pretty much what's a black site, and it'll be like our special little prison that nobody will ever talk about. But the problem with that was, most of the time, they didn't send us terrorists. They just sent people that were enemies to their government. Innocent people. Or at least by no stretch of the imagination we would perceive as guilty. And it's just one of those things that it comes up and it depresses me to a certain extent, because you've seen nobody. This has become the norm in American politics. It's become the norm to go against the rules of war and not looking at, just turning a blind eye to international law, and it's just fairly depressing to see that. And again, I'm not saying Ted Cruz is amazing, but on this one issue, I would agree with him. But again, and this,
nope, he's just a big old pussy.
And I mean, everybody's making a big deal oh, he said pussy. No, my whole thing is what I find wrong about this is the substance of it, and this also affects, in my opinion, the Democratic campaign too. I mean, I was talking to my dad about Bernie, and he was like, I love him on the economy, I love him on that. But he can't touch Hillary on foreign policy, and
we can all agree here that is where he kind of falls short. I mean, his foreign policy is solid, but that is where he falls short of Hillary. He's not as confident.
Yeah, he needs to elaborate more, and I've always said that, but I don't think it's weaker. I think we have a candidate coming out and saying the U.S. doesn't need to be the world's police. The U.S. needs to abide by international law. They need to be like every other country whenever they go on their expeditions or on their offensives to different countries, and that's unconventional to us. That seems off to us because we look at the past. I know none of us might have been alive to when there was a time when we weren't practicing soft imperialism. I mean, and so that's why I just think it's so out of the odd. I don't think he has a weak one. He does need to elaborate.
Exactly. That's what I mean. He's just not as confident.
Yeah.
And that's where he falls short.
Yeah. Yeah. But
and he needs to be more on the offensive whenever it comes to foreign policy, because I think we can all agree Hillary, that is her strong point, and that's where she does the best in the Democratic debates.
Yeah. And I mean, part of that is also because, I mean, we have these incidents of radical Islamic terrorism going up, and so, that's bound to catch the eye of people. Of course, it's a bigger deal in the Republican debate rather than the Democratic debate, but it's still there for Democrats like my dad and all of that.
See, I feel like Hillary's really pushing that, because during the debate she kept on bringing up, she's like, I was the one who told Obama to go after Osama, I was the one who did this. She's super about that, because she knows that people are scared right now.
Yeah, but part of that makes me wonder, did she not learn anything from the previous election? Because whenever she was going hard on, and this was back, she was also talking about going into Syria, which, I mean, it would have been it's a bad idea now, and it was a bad idea back then, but she was talking about going into Syria, and everybody didn't want to vote for her because she was too hawkish. And I mean, granted, Obama wasn't he wasn't the peaceful option, but he at least made himself sound to be like it. And so that's where we got, and it's weird to see Hillary still clinging to this strategy, and I do think it's because of the fear mongering. I think that is the reason why she's clinging to it, but it's not a smart strategy when you've already lost on it. I mean, we look at least Democrats don't care as much.
Yeah.
We could at least all agree on that.
The Democrats aren't really intimidated by fear tactics. And...
Yeah. No, it was perfect. The first Democratic debate, who won on Drudge had Jim Webb winning over Hillary.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Jim,
well, he was the best Republican on stage that night.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying, is Democrats really do not care.
Yeah.
Whenever it comes to, or care as much. I shouldn't say that they don't care at all, but they definitely don't care as much.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the Drudge guys thought Jim Webb was running circles around them because he said he killed a guy on stage.
See, that's what I don't get is all this unprofessional attitude. Going back into Trump saying the pussy thing.
Yeah.
You constantly see the right posting pictures of Obama next to the sign that had a rap lyric on it where he's giving a thumbs up and people are like, our president, everyone. He's just so unprofessional. But yet Trump can say pussy on national television and it's all okay.
And Republicans just eat that shit up.
Yeah, another man can be like, I killed a man, and they're just like, oh hell yeah. Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah, he killed a guy.
Yeah, we're like, no, our black president can't support black music.
And I mean, even then, it's just it's one of those things. The right and the left is guilty, but definitely not as bad. Is the right loves to go for character assassination rather than focus on maybe what the issue of that celebrity or of that individual is trying to bring up. Mm-hmm. I mean, we saw it with Beyonce, we saw it with Quentin Tarantino, we've seen it so many times. Mm-hmm. They just want to evade the issue and want to be like, oh, well, we're going to judge the character of the person. Mm-hmm. Well, it'd help that maybe that they wouldn't say anything if you looked at the issue.
Yeah. Exactly.
And, I mean, there's been so many times when Obama said the N-word on Mark Maron's podcast.
Oh, yeah, no, everybody lost their heads on that one.
Yeah, and, the context of it wasn't even that bad.
Yeah, I feel like no one listened to that at all.
Oh, I remember the next day I heard he's on Mark Maron. Did he go to his
garage?
Yeah,
dude.
Yeah, and I was like, that's pretty cool. I mean, they didn't talk much about politics. They just kind of talked about life and stuff. But I mean, it wasn't even that bad for what the context was put into it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they had a field day with it. But what he was addressing was the fact that some people don't like him because he's black. And that's
that's fair to say.
Yeah,
there's still a racist.
Yeah, I mean, to deny that is to deny that we have biases at the very least.
Yeah,
and everybody does. I mean, it's to insinuate that nobody has no sort of bias in them at all is just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But again, instead of focusing on the issue of what Obama was bringing up, he said the N-word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you go back and listen to it, he had the right to say it. He was talking about racism in America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I can't even single out the right on that because the left was also the far left, the cringe, the fringe left,
the regressive left.
Isn't the regressive left usually about it's their word, only they can use it? So, where do they stand?
No, not even that. I think they're trying to eliminate any kind of word that's sensitive to anybody. So even
treadmill.
Yeah, the euphemism treadmill.
They were mad that he used it with the hard R and all of that. And,
yeah.
And I remember looking at
Rick Santorum says it halfway through, and nobody ever calls him out on that.
Oh, that was funny too. But I had seen Don Lemon on CNN, and I hate Don Lemon, but this was one of the only times he was making sense. He was being pushed by this lady that he shouldn't say the N-word at all. And Don Lemon said, well, I'm a journalist. If I'm discussing it and it's within the right context, I could say the N-word. He said the N-word. And that lady was like, I can't believe you said that. And that was my example of, well, even the left is kind of going kooky on this. And there's no reason to be. I mean, you kind of turn into, again, I think the right, as much as they wouldn't characterize themselves as this, I think they're reactionary. Yeah. I think whenever they see something, the first thing that comes into their head is emotion. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but that's the first thing that strikes to them. and rather the left, it might strike to them, but they at least want to look into it more. They
want to think about it. And
they want to understand the position. I mean, maybe I'm overgeneralizing, or maybe I'm completely wrong, but that's my problem with the far left doing stuff like that. Is they're just becoming as reactionary as the right.
Yeah. I agreed. Yeah. So, did you want to go ahead and move on to the next topic?
Yeah.
Or? Okay. Yeah. I did some research, and for anybody who hasn't heard, the Michigan Senate passed a bill declaring sodomy a felony punishable by 15 years in prison. And honestly, the first thing I want to say to this is, what else is going on in Michigan? Can we figure something out about Flint? Like, I don't think this is the biggest priority right now, is trying to declare sodomy a felony punishable with 15 years. Like, that's just complete bullshit. I mean, they claim not to be targeting homosexuals in any kind of way, but I think this is blatant, in your face, them trying to dance around the Supreme Court decision on equal marriage. I mean, can anybody else agree with that?
I think I can agree with that to a certain degree. I know too little about it to say, but at the same time, I mean, I just don't see them having any sort of way of even enforcing this. I mean, they could make the law all they want. I just don't see how they're going to enforce this. Now, I think we can appeal to more. If you want to argue that it's wrong, it's easy to argue that it's wrong, even to get the right in on this. Mm-hmm. I think a good way of arguing it to them would be to kind of the more libertarian-leaning sort of people, is to say, well, I mean, libertarians believe that the government has no right to know what you do in your bedroom.
Yeah.
Even if you're a gay man, if you're a straight man, with
it should be between two consenting adults.
Yeah.
And I just want to see this. I would love to see Alex Jones' take on this. The water's making her kids gay. What do we do about it? We pass a law making sodomy illegal. Bilderberg.
I think it might have some. It does have that kind of undertone of like, this is a little homophobic. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know if I could make that claim.
My biggest point is, let's fucking focus on Flint right now, please. Can we just please focus on Flint?
Well, I mean, I just think it's like, there's not, Flint aside, there's just bigger issues than what somebody decides to do with their anal cavity.
I feel like it is a thing against it's totally homophobic in a way, because like, they're not even fucking thinking about the fact of lesbians. Like, I have plenty of lesbian friends who have told me that they have done sodomy before, or whatever, anal acts. And so it's not just the gay culture. So just because that's more of an option for them, doesn't mean that not everyone's doing it. I know a lot of straight men who like to get something up their butt every now and then. Yeah. Should we just put them in jail? Just because they have an extra fetish or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a completely ridiculous law whenever you're putting into context how many people we have in prison for stupid drug laws and everything else. It is a dumb law, but however, I just don't see it gaining any ground. I don't see how they're gonna, without breaking any sort of civil liberties, I don't see how they're going to justify enforcing it to any individual.
If we're able to, say we're in the government or whatever, and so we find a video online of someone doing sodomy, and we know for a fact that it was filmed 2 days ago, and we have their address, and it was filmed at that address, can we bring that video to them and say, here's our evidence, you're going to jail?
I don't think you can. I think, at that point, they would still have a case. The defendant in that case would still have a case to make, and he would probably still walk free from it. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've seen numerous sex tapes that have gone. But then again, I mean, these were high profile, so they were able to put a lot of money into their defense. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I just don't see any sort of way of enforcing it. I mean, in that one particular issue, I mean, to me right now, that would be a problem. But then again, I'm not really in and out with all of, the law by presidents and all of that. But I just don't see them enforcing it. And if they do enforce it with, again, the great thing about social media, there will be outrage. There will be backlash, especially if it's somebody who's gay. I mean,
yes, it's gonna be a nightmare.
Yeah, and so I mean, and to a certain degree, some some point some politician will point out, well, this is making us look bad, so we're just gonna overturn it, and it's
like the only people who are gonna go to
but
jail,
it does. My problem is it does waste taxpayer money.
yeah. I feel like the only people they can catch on this though is like maybe a homeless couple, or like some crackhead who's like in his car and like trying to get some. Like those are the only people we're gonna catch is like public sex. Yeah, and then then we're gonna charge them on double. Like, they're gonna be fucked for life.
Yeah, and see that's what I'm saying, man. It's completely stupid in the sense of we don't need any more pointless laws. I mean, we already have enough as it is.
Yeah. The way I see it, okay,
we should focus on repealing the stupid ones we have, let alone adding new ones.
I would understand this being a misdemeanor.
I wouldn't understand it being a misdemeanor.
Okay. I mean, like, there's still a lot of states that consider sodomy.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I mean, here in Texas, I think it's considered a misdemeanor. Don't quote me on that. I'm not quite sure, but I know there's some kind of restrictions on it. But a 15-year felony?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Like, what did they say anything like it's torturous? Like, what? What is their reasoning?
The articles I've read, it doesn't specify. They're just, I don't know. Like I said, I think this is just their way of dancing around the Supreme Court decision. Mm-hmm. But they couldn't specify because normally there's some type of there's something in the document or the bill that will say this is why we're making it illegal.
Yeah.
It's but
I mean, it's a pointless thing, and again, I see it just becoming like what you said, the misdemeanor, like where it is in some states. It's nobody's going to want to enforce it, and frankly, I don't think anybody really can.
Yeah.
And then again, there will be outrage. So, but
there's going to be a lot of civil liberties protests, and
I have
comes along with it.
I mean, this is like it's like drawing line. Part of me is like, it's so stupid, it's not going to happen. But it is stupid. But it pisses me off that it passed. Mm-hmm. So like it's a hard drawing line for me because I'm like, okay, that's so ridiculous that it's not gonna affect much, but at the same time, it's like they fucking spent money on this.
Exactly, taxpayer money.
They overlooked the water crisis that's going on.
Yeah, what's going on in Flint, guys? Can anybody tell me what's going on in Flint?
Nestle's taking all the water that they actually have. That's exactly what's happening.
No, did you hear about this? Today marked the 9-year anniversary of Obama announcing his presidency.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Well, happy birthday, Obama's presidency.
Well, no, he did a small speech from, I forget where he announced. I think it was Springfield. Because he went back to his office today, actually. Yeah, and he did a small speech about. I love the Intercept's headline for it is Obama celebrates 9 years of nothing of no politics getting done or something like that. Here we go. No, but it's true, man. I mean, and he did apologize. I mean, it wasn't like he was trying to celebrate. Like he was like saying like there's been so much that's done. He did kind of apologize for how these past years it really hasn't the apathy of politics hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. People still view politics as a kind of like a taboo to even talk about and all about that. And I mean I wouldn't say that there was no change under Obama. Mm-hmm. He just provided us like I like the way I think Cenk Uygur puts it. He gave us pocket change. Yeah. Yeah. He gave us pocket change. But I mean it's one of those things that and I see him talking about it constantly. Part of me wants to say he could have done more, but the other part of me says, I mean, especially now, I mean, everybody saw whenever the Republicans got a hold of Congress, nothing was going to happen. It was going to be more gridlock.
Well, he had the supermajority for 2 years.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I can say nothing really got done during that supermajority.
But I look at it, and I mean, I that makes me think that it's more not his fault. It's just the establishment. I mean, we have establishment politicians embedded within Congress. I think again, people put it this way, and I tend to agree. He was sat down and he was told how the world worked, and that's the one. And if there's one thing that scares me about Bernie, it's that I don't think it's going to be that. I mean, like Obama again. I hate to say that because again, Bernie has a history. Bernie has all of that working for him. But it is a troubling thing that whenever we look back at the Obama presidency and what he promised and what we got. I mean, he promised to close down Guantanamo Bay. He still hasn't done it. And this is, and I mean...
But would you put that blame all on Obama?
I wouldn't put it on him if he didn't make the claim.
That's the problem, is he can never put his money where his mouth is, man. Like, it's always...
Like, at one point he was talking about, like, this was before he released the nonviolent drug offenders, that list came out, but they asked him about marijuana, and he was like, well, I mean, maybe one president one day will make the push to make marijuana illegal. It's like, you're sitting... Mm-hmm. Do you disagree with it then? Like, you're sitting in the Oval Office and you're going to say that. I just don't get it. And I mean, there's a lot of good essays I've read by people who really digged into his past and said, no, I mean, he was the Harvard Journal's editor, mm-hmm. but he never took a stance on anything that he wrote. And that's really odd, particularly for being the Harvard editor. To get that position, you have to take sides, you have to take stances, but he was always able to tread that middle ground and kind of lead from behind. And I mean, if we looked at the history of whenever he was running, we could have probably foretold that would end up happening, and to a certain degree it did. And so some things it's not so much his fault, but I feel he could have fought harder.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree.
Yeah.
Speaking of Obama, I guess I'll go ahead and talk about these traditional welfare effects. A lot of people, I mean, if you're as unfortunate as I am, you might hear, Obama's a socialist. He's just trying to give all your money to the people who don't want to work, or something along those lines. Well, the really big thing is in the last census, yes, in the last census, $59 billion was spent on traditional welfare subsidies, and which that goes food stamps, something along those lines, and $92 billion is spent on corporate subsidies, meaning more out of your paycheck is going to corporations and CEOs who make 20 times more than you do in an hour. Obama's the food stamp president, everybody likes to say. And yeah, agreed. Welfare is at an all-time high. However, it's a trend that started before he took office due to combination of recession, corporations avoid hiring despite all-time high profits. Minimum wage hasn't kept up to the rate of inflation. I mean, I really feel like the blame shouldn't be put on welfare recipients. It should be put on corporations who rely on low wages and public subsidies, to be honest. Do y'all have anything to chime in on that?
I mean, that's perfect. I often wonder though, do other people in others, because I mean we're in Texas, we're in a red state.
Yeah.
Are they subject to this as much? I just wonder that. But anyway,
getting this information.
Well, no. Well, I think, if anything, I'm saying that they already have that information. Okay. That if somebody was to make the claim that Obama's a socialist.
Well, I mean, this is the Republican talking point.
They
don't want to wage a war on poverty, but they want to wage a war on poor people.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the biggest thing of all of this. And we'll sit here and say that, they're just people who want to sit on their ass and receive government checks. Well, I mean, only 2% of everybody on welfare results in welfare fraud.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me see. Okay, in 2011, they did a study of people on welfare getting drug tested, and only 2.6% of welfare recipients tested positive for drugs, and the majority of that was just marijuana. It's a law that you do have to work to receive government aid.
Well, you have to apply to X amount of jobs and X amount.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, which I mean, I often find it kind of fruitless whenever, like, I think we saw Oklahoma do it just a few months ago, where they were like, well, we're going to drug test you, and if you drug test positive for for any drug that's not prescribed or whatever, you're going to not get welfare. And we saw, like, we saw so much money get wasted.
Yeah,
because we have like 1.6 amount of people who tested positive.
Yes,
and I understand that could vary by state, but overall, I mean, it's a fairly big deal when a state, like any state, tends to test these political ideas and then see what comes about. And as me personally, I think principally speaking, I don't give a shit if they're on drugs.
Yes.
I think all drugs should be illegal.
Yeah. Yeah. What a consenting adult wants to do is his business. I mean, as long as he's being a productive citizen, I don't see the problem.
Well, I mean, I see people on welfare who get beer.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not saying like, beer is the equivalent to meth, but why do they get it? It's because they want to relieve stress.
Yes.
And that's what anybody who does any drugs, anything, it's just coping tools.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it goes back to the talking point of, this is the drug war is not a war on drugs, it's a war on people and how they tend to cope with poverty, or anything else. But I mean, those facts, I mean, I have nothing to dispute there.
Question: are you even against marijuana being decriminalized, or?
I mean, if it was decriminalized, I would take it. I want, like I said, I want every drug to be legalized.
Oh, you want it to be legalized?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misheard you.
Oh no, I want it. No,
Okay.
I think if anything, if we were to legalize everything, I think
Then people would just be doing their things in their home and
I mean, my whole thing is that's what freedom is. Just because, I mean, right now we have two people. We have person A who's an alcoholic and they can't get their life together. Mm-hmm. We have person B who's an alcoholic and they show up to work on time and they're, a productive member of society. Just because person A has a problem doesn't mean person B suffers in this case. And so
don't let a group full of bad apples ruin everything.
No, but I mean, and that's what it is.
Yeah, that's exactly
principally
what it
speaking.
Is. Yeah. How do you feel about this study?
I don't know how I feel about a lot of these things. Politics isn't exactly my forte, and that's one of the reasons why I like conversating with people like y'all. Mm-hmm. It's like I trust y'all. I know that y'all are gonna look up y'all's facts and like educate me in the right direction.
Let us brainwash you, Duddy.
Please do.
Us evil commies brainwashing you.
We're still on the welfare thing, correct?
Yeah, we're talking about welfare.
So, are y'all wanting it to go up from 59 bill?
You know what? I would love to see a dramatic decrease in welfare, but there's one way we can solve this problem: increase the minimum wage and tax the living shit out of corporations.
Yes.
Yeah. Principally speaking, when I first got into politics, I didn't know a lot of facts, and I just kind of knew the generalities of things. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I saw with welfare is Republicans, generally speaking, want to cut from the bottom and hope that it fixes everything else. Okay. And what I saw, not all Democrats, but Democrats like Elizabeth Warren and independents like Bernie Sanders, who caucused with the Democrats and stuff. They wanted to cut from the top. They wanted to cut from people from the corporation getting, they wanted to cut ExxonMobil getting $20 billion because ExxonMobil's already successful. Why do they get $20 billion? And so that, as a, just viewing it in that might be a little bit too, there might be some more nuance, that might be more nuanced than what I viewed it as, but I still stand by that. I still stand by why, if anything, I would rather have a system where we subsidize the poorest people in America. Basically, I forget which economist refers to it. Right now we have corporate socialism, which is corporatism, and we have harsh capitalism for the poor.
Yes.
We could easily, at this point, why don't we make it a hybrid system where we have capitalism for money-making industries and companies that are making huge profits, and socialism for the very poor. Like I said, if anything, I would like to subsidize them, like on whenever they put their tax returns, if they're making under what a certain family what a family would be living on. I think they should get money from the government.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I think even then that even helps the Republicans' problem with the minimum wage. Whenever they say, oh well, because they and this is like the one kind of legitimate thing I have a problem with the minimum wage being raised. Ultimately, I'm for it, but the whole thing of, well, somebody has a certain set of skills and somebody who has less skills, that's just not a capitalistic, economy of, well, they're being paid the same. That doesn't make any sense. Then I say, okay, great. That's where we instead just subsidize the very poor. And I think the minimum wage should definitely be raised from $7.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's...
Yeah, but... And ultimately, I do support the $15 minimum wage because I've seen it, for instance, in California, whenever they first did it. We were looking at people... The only problem it seemed, I don't know now, but I know the problem that looked like was people were making... That lifted them out of poverty to where that they couldn't get their benefits. And by a right-winger... If you're a person of the right, that should be music to your ears.
Yeah.
This is somebody who's making enough money to be living, so we're shrinking government. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I think... That's why I'm ultimately for it, because I've seen it tested out, and for the most part, it's gained positive things. And again, I don't see a right-wing... The only thing that I see the right wing that is being even adding to this conversation is, well, just let it be. Mm-hmm. Well, there's
pull yourself up by your bootstraps, boy.
Yeah, I mean, we should definitely usually go with the ones that have more pros than cons.
Yeah, and see, like, it would be one thing if the right wing gave an example of a solution, and there was maybe a little bit better or better in different fields, but they're not. It just seems like they're not giving a solution besides saying flat tax, and that's bullshit. We could even dismiss it at face value. But and that's why I think ultimately it's good to look at what LBJ, the basic, we wage war on poverty. Mm-hmm. And there was also an interesting study. It was a while back. It was done by I think Mother Jones reported on it. I don't know who it was done by, but there was a poor community in California, and through I don't know how they did this, but they looked at who in the community was going to most likely, like the poorest and who had the criminal record. And they kind of predicted the people in the community who would commit a crime in recent time. And so they went to that person and they gave them money. And you saw crime rates drop.
Okay.
Very interesting. I am now, like, when right-wingers read that, they're going to be like, oh, we shouldn't be giving money to criminals to stop crime, and I also stand with them.
That's not the point. The people living in poverty and people who are in very unfortunate situations, they're going to do whatever they need to do to provide for their family. And if you give them money, they don't have to worry about selling drugs or stealing things or just basic street crime.
Yeah, and see, to a certain degree, I agree with them, because there are going to be those people in society who are just going to be...
Yes, I'm not saying that. I'm not generalizing, saying anybody who gets money is going to automatically not be a criminal anymore.
But I just think it's interesting how they use that methodology and was able to find at least a partway solution. Mm-hmm. I mean, it might not be very long-term. They just did it for a small, period of time. But it showed, again, that by waging a war on poverty, we can affect so many different things, like with criminology and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it's a very interesting study, and I think that's what I like about the kind of liberal Democrat sort of solution is it's always focused on getting people out of poverty. There's always going to be those outliers in society who are just terrible people, they're criminals, and they want to commit crime. Mm-hmm. But let's find ways of dealing with the people who just need money for X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm.
As well as rehabilitation. Because there is going to be a lot of people, like Julian said, who are just going to be worthless to society. They're just going to keep on doing the things they're doing regardless of their situation. And I think everybody can agree on that. But the biggest thing is whenever people like that go to prison and they are in the correctional system, I think we should focus more on rehabilitation than punishment and locking them up like animals.
Oh, yeah. That's just I always see that question. I'll take a lot of political spectrum tests whenever I get new information just to see where I like to stay updated on that sort of stuff, but that's always a question that's asked. Is do you prefer punishment or rehabilitation? And I would say 90%. I mean, for what we have right now, we have so much of the prison population in there for nonviolent drug charges. It'd be so much better just to do rehabilitation.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And plus, it would be it's just all a waste of our tax dollars.
Oh yeah. And see, that's where I also become critical. Like, you're fiscally conservative. You're now more Republicans are starting to come out. And they're not for these draconian things. So it's hard for me to generalize now because
maybe there might be hope in the Republican Party.
Oh yeah, no, there's I've said it before. There are times where the Republican Party represented me better than the Democrats when it came to NSA spying and all of that stuff. But again, there are still high profile Republicans that are for more of these draconian laws, and I'm like, how could you be fiscally conservative, but be flooding the prisons and this is taxpayer money and all of that?
Agreed.
Yeah, but have anything else?
No. Do you have anything you want to chime in, Duddy?
For just overall?
Really, I want to know something about welfare.
Okay.
And is there's time limits on welfare, right?
I don't believe there are. I've heard a lot of people saying that we should give them 2 years on welfare, and if they're not on their feet by then we should just let them go.
Yeah. I don't see. I feel like that's way too long. I feel like they should create a system, for example, so we give this person 2 months of welfare, and then if they have a job but it's still not good enough, we keep giving them the welfare. Maybe a smaller amount that matches up with their income. But if they don't have a job by then, you give them a 2-month ban.
Okay.
And that way, they either spend that 2 months, figuring out what they need to do, getting their life back together, or they just say, "Fuck it, I don't want this or anything." They're gonna make their own decisions that way because they're gonna have to live with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to me,
oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Because my whole thing with disability welfare and all that is it should go to the people who cannot work.
Uh-huh.
I work very closely with people with autism, special needs and stuff, and some of those people, they can't get a job. More power to them if they can go work at be a bagger or anything like that. I love that. There's nothing wrong with that. But the people who just can't, people who can't form speech or anything like that, can't walk, that's who that money should be going to. That might be a wrong way of viewing it, but that also goes back into me for they need to raise the minimum wage so that way these people don't need that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I do believe that minimum wage needs to go up because that's one of the reasons why people go on welfare. That's why I was on food stamps for a while.
Yeah, and see, that's what ultimately what the term is wage slavery. Mm-hmm. That's wage slavery. You have a job, you're getting paid a wage, but it's not a living one, so it's where you're really going with it. It's wage slavery.
Yeah.
But what you were saying earlier, principally, I think it's sound. What the hard thing is really implementing it and finding a system that kind of works to where they're not being too lenient, but they're not being too strict. Okay. I don't know the deadlines as it stands. I know, you have to go to X number of interviews, and one of those will probably be you'll either get the job or you won't, and if you don't get the job, then they'll keep on having you on. So, and my problem is if we make this a little harsher, we're experiencing this right now at, again, the statistic is 1 or 2% of fraud is being committed. I think I'm up for doing that, but again, I'm not going to do it whenever we're still giving money to the very top. Again, I would rather cut and if we cut that and we still have tons of problems, then we could start looking at these social security things, these the welfare thing. We could start looking at that. But I look at stuff I think the U.S. has 4 aircraft carriers, and most advanced nations have 2.
Okay.
2 of those, if we were just to sell them, would be a fuck ton of money.
Yeah.
And that that's just one of those things. And whenever you approach a Republican to this, their response usually is, well, it creates a sense of security for our allies, and I guess it could, but I mean, after a while, my problem is you're writing a blank check for these things. Mm-hmm. But whenever it comes to education, whenever it comes to welfare, whenever it comes to Medicaid, suddenly we need to become fiscally conservative.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
So, like, if we were well rounded, and welfare was still a problem, yeah, I would be like, okay, yeah, like, we might need to make some cuts. Mm-hmm. But as long as we're giving blank checks to Wall Street and corporations and the military industrial complex, I just have so much difficulty with saying.
I'll agree with Republicans whenever they say we need to cut welfare. I'll agree with that whenever welfare spending has gone past the corporate subsidies.
Yeah, which I mean, it never will.
No, of course not, because we're enslaved to Wall Street, I should say.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean it's highly nuanced and everything, but again, if you're not going to try to resolve those problems, but you're going to try to resolve problems that are kind of, I'm not going to say minuscule, but are smaller in comparison, I really have to question where your priorities.
Yeah. Another thing. So, like, y'all know about the difference, like, between like minimum wage and then the autism wage?
No, I don't. Go.
Okay, yeah. So say like someone's minimum wage at a job is just like $7.50 an hour. Cut in half if you're autistic.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Is that even legal?
It is, because of the fact that you're not doing as much. So like, person who's putting the stuff in the bags is going to make more than the autistic kid who's taking the bags and putting them in the car and walking in the heat out there and stuff like that.
That's ridiculous.
What they've justified is they're getting social experience, so they're getting to learn how to fit into society.
No, fuck that. You shouldn't be paid by socializing with people. No, that's ridiculous. You should be paid a regular wage. You know, am I making sense now?
Like to a certain extent, it makes sense within the market. But it's not morally sound, and it contradicts a lot of things. The fact that these people don't really have to work. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't have to in the sense like they're getting like lump sums from the government.
Yeah.
But they're getting money from the government. They're getting assistance. And this is somebody who wants to actually get a job and better themselves. I thought we were supposed to encourage these people that if they did that.
Like I said, you shouldn't be paid in experience. Y'all get what I mean? You shouldn't be paid in experience. They shouldn't be saying, oh, okay, this is your opportunity to go and socialize with people. So there you go. That's half of your paycheck right there.
Yeah.
Whenever I was working at the Goodwill, the fucking Goodwill of all places, where they're one of the like top people to hire anyone with like special needs. Mm-hmm. So I was the guy who went and picked up furniture and all that stuff. But I had my two helpers who were two autistic men. And they made half of my pay, even though they were doing it just as much. But they justified it as, you're the one driving the truck. You're the one who's on the insurance and stuff. And it's like, and then I find out that they're not even on the insurance. So if I get into a wreck, I'm covered, but these two boys aren't.
Yeah. Yeah, see, and that's the thing. Like, it'd be one thing if there wasn't any fuckery going on with it at all, but often there is. Mm-hmm. And that's my whole issue is it seems less of a thing of we're helping these people, of we're helping their employer. And I'm not, it's just, my problem is we give these employers power. We give them the benefit of the doubt that we're going to be, we believe that you're reasonable human beings. Mm-hmm. And then they fucking violate it. And then they wonder, whenever we have to pass a law for these things. And it's like, sometimes I wish that there was less regulation in some places, but you kind of fucking dug that hole yourself. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's the alternative? Letting you fucking run amok and just doing disgraceful things like that. Yeah. And it's, I've never heard of that, and I would imagine, but I could see it easily being true.
I mean, like, that's my whole problem with politics, and it's probably real biased just because, like, I'm on the spectrum, and I can still work, like, normally, like, it's no problem, it doesn't affect me, but I also work with a lot of people on the spectrum, a lot of people in my family are higher on the spectrum, like, my nephew has severe autism, like, stage 1 and stuff, And that's my problem with this. We always talk about equal rights for everyone and stuff, but we leave out the mentally sick. Even people with like Alzheimer's, we just forget about them.
Oh yeah, no, and we have made great strides, small strides, I guess I should say, for people who have mental problems. You know, the one thing that I always point to was during the Reagan administration, he cut the state-funded institutions and all of that. So this is whenever we start to see mental problems with the homeless start to kind of be parallel and be intersecting at the same time, is because they, at this point now, they don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
And again, I want to. I think about my ideal place. I want to be able to look at the homeless person and say they got themselves into that position, and there was nothing. You know, they would continue to put themselves in that position. But whenever small things like that, and I'm not gonna know. I'm not gonna be able to know if that guy's mentally sick in like the small, the seconds of interaction time I'm gonna get with him.
Yes.
And that's my whole thing is it's become so crazy that I don't know what that dude is going through. And in a time like this where income inequality is bad, whenever, like you said, people aren't getting as much equality with mental issues and all of that, how could we hold anybody accountable? Or how could we hold them accountable and at least be confident in the judgment we have made? And yeah, I've known a lot of people too who have really severe mental issues, who they chose to go to work, and for the most part, for what I've met, they've either been compensated the same as me, or even sometimes more because they chose to work and get a lot of experience.
Okay.
But I mean, it's sad whenever you see those times whenever they're clearly being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate the Goodwill. I hate Salvation Army. Love and hate.
Yeah, you want to love them because they're willing to give these people jobs and they're willing to do that, but at the same time,
but they're not equal.
Yeah, it becomes more like, are you exploiting them or are you giving them a job?
Yeah. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And yeah, for a while I was kind of looking into disabilities rights and all of that. And even interestingly enough, I've learned a little bit from the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. They have like a group, because they have different subgroups. Like they have like religious socialists and feminist socialists. And one of their subgroups is for workers with disabilities and all of that. So they provide some good information. I get their little newsletter and stuff, but it's...
I would definitely
if I could
recommend everybody go and check out the Democratic Socialists of America if you're looking to become a member.
Yeah, I got my membership pretty cheap. I get the newsletter every season, and I paid $20 a year.
Oh, just $20 a year?
$20 a year.
That's not bad at all.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I remember I was like, I wish I could pay $20 a month. I went on there and it said a year, and I'll probably still to this day I still want to upgrade it. Just to get a month, but they provide you with a lot of information. They also, you could do organizing calls with them. One of the first things that they invite you to is a conference call to talk with them and all of that on your ideas, and they try to get you involved within those subgroups as well.
Interesting.
Another thing, if you live in the Odessa Midland area, we're going to be doing a phone bank.
Yeah.
For Bernie Sanders on the 22nd of February.
Yeah.
I believe I would definitely check up with one of our buddies, Sean DeWitt. He should have more information. Or you could get with Julian Ross or me, Cameron Norwood. Ask us about it.
I would say just go like the page, Permian Basin for Bernie Sanders. Also, if you are signed up to if you're signed up as a volunteer for Bernie Sanders and you're signed up for the emails, you'll be getting emails. I already got mine. There's 2 of them just this week. None of them are Sean's, but the specific one. But they give you anytime that there is you're in a radius of an event, they will send you a notification telling you when the event is, and and who to report to and all of that. So
I definitely recommend that. I guess this has been the first episode of The Statist. This was quite a good experience. We would love your feedback. Go ahead and like our page, subscribe to us on Facebook. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.